I've been asked to give you a kind of brief update of what's happened in the CCTS over the last couple of years and kind of looking towards the future. The real central theme of the OSU Center for Clinical and Translational Science is really to create the infrastructure and the educational and career development programs that actually enhance the process of translational science. And approximately 10 years ago, Fontana-Rosa and associates really defined translational science as the effective translation of new knowledge, mechanisms, and techniques generated by the advances in basic science research into new approaches for prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of disease that is essential for improving health. And certainly, this entire program today is really focused on understanding that and thinking about the entire spectrum of translational research, from the bench to the bedside to the improvements in healthcare delivery and obviously the changes in public policy that need to go along with the ultimate optimization of that. And what we do believe in the CCTS is in fact that by bringing together an academic home for translational science, that we can really create a high-performance culture that values collaboration, tolerates risks, and rewards shared success in a unified, integrated, and cohesive institution. And certainly we're excited not only to focus on this as the OSU CCTS, but in fact to focus on these same types of things as part of the Appalachian Translational Research Network in our programs today. So over the past 5 years, most of our efforts have really been in creating this academic home for translational science. And doing that, we really need at first to create that foundation or that base for translational science, and that's in crafting the environment by having the resources and infrastructure that allow one to successfully be able to move their translational science forward. And the engine that actually then drives that are the people, the collaborative groups, the different colleges, and the different institutions that all work together along with seed grants and pilots that actually fund the research activity that ultimately add to that translational science. And so you can see kind of that within this house that we built, that all the components work together to ultimately meet that lofty goal of catalyzing scientific innovation. We think that we've actually built the CCTS based upon strong foundations of an aligned vision between all the health sciences colleges, as well as the other 9 colleges at Ohio State University, the Comprehensive Cancer Center, and multiple other centers that actually also have aligned vision, and then the real strengths between both OSU and Nationwide Children's Hospital, including the fact that we have one of the most comprehensive health sciences colleges, that we have one of the most robust, actually patient care environments, and that we have tied together of multiple different educational programs to actually create the next generation of clinical and translational scientists. At our core are really a group of specific qualities that we use in the mnemonic INSIGHTS, which includes for the stimulation of innovation, collaboration, integration, transformation, enablement, and of course, in this day of tough economies, sustainability. And really keeping these at our core allows us to really move forward this vision collectively. So how well have we done over the past 5 years? Well, in creating an academic home, one would hope to have actually engagement, and we actually measure engagement by the number of members that are involved in the Center for Clinical and Translational Science. And you can see since we actually started to establish membership within the CCTS that we've continued to grow on an annual basis, and now our numbers are almost 2,100 members, of which about 60% of them are faculty, 40% of them are research staff and trainees, and they represent all 14 colleges, Nationwide Children's Hospital, and in fact community partners working together to actually have this collective vision. The CCTS provides resources across the entire continuum of translational science, from those type of things that actually stimulate basic science discovery, including such cores as a laser capture microdissection core or the comparative animal models core, to clinical research and community engaged research efforts, all the way over to those that are involved in the dissemination research, including health literacy, and working together with Net Wellness to be able to get that information out to consumers as well as out to healthcare professionals in order to change the way that we deliver health. How do we measure our impact? Well, the first way we measure that is how many people who actually come to us for resources to move their scientific efforts forward. And to date, we have more than 920 individually different investigators who have actually utilized one or more of the CCTS resources to help to facilitate their activities. And as a lagging edge indicator of the success of this, we've had more than 720 publications that have been presented and published and peer reviewed to actually disseminate the information, the science that we're doing to begin to change the health of America as well as on a more global impact. We use things like this scientific meeting to actually introduce new areas of investigation and to begin to give you tools and things to drive forward to be able to incorporate that within your research agenda. So for example, 2 years ago we had a focus on drug development, and that was our annual scientific meeting, and we brought together individuals that looked at everything from target identification through drug optimization through phase 1 trials. And then we combined that together with pilot funding that pushed new use into drug development, into PK/PD, and to the use of the comparative animal models core. And you can begin to see that by really making a concerted effort in these areas, by bringing together cores and educational initiatives together with it, that we can begin to see a community grow up around that area. So this year we're doing that same thing associated with the Appalachian Translational Research Network and community engaged research, trying to give you the toolkits and the skills to be able to move forward and to think about that as you bring together your interdisciplinary teams. We also understand that it's absolutely critical for us not only to think of this in kind of our top-down iterative scientific approach, but for us actually to begin to think about scientific questions from an innovation approach, where we actually address the most pressing problems for the communities and bring the communities in as partners. And those communities can be healthcare providers, they could be other scientists, they can be patients, they could be public policy analysts. And so in bringing together this approach towards innovation, coupling it to commercialization, which actually increases the dissemination, you can see that by making workshop series and other efforts like this, that we're beginning to change the culture at Ohio State, and we're seeing more development of IP and moving forward that actually I think will allow individuals to uptake the advances that we've had scientifically from the efforts of the wonderful scientists and students and research staff that we have. We are a group of partnerships. So in fact, the goal of the CCTS is to really stimulate team science. And to do that, we reach out for partners broadly. So we're engaged in more than 20 different networks and consortia, including serving as the WHI Regional Coordinating Center for the Midwest to actually move the next generation of women's health research, 2 new neurologic NINDS initiatives, including NeuroNext and NeuroNet, and the Pharmacogenomics, God bless you, network, among others. More recently, we've actually been successful in working across the state and getting AHRQ funding for the Collaborative Ohio Inquiry Network, or COIN, so that we now can really do practice-based research network in the communities to actually understand what's happening there in a way that's immediately understandable and relates to the actual community needs. Many of you may have heard that over the past 2 months that we received word of funding from the state of Ohio for an Ohio CTSA collaborative, or the OCC, to create an integrated clinical trials network between the Cleveland Clinic, Case Western, Rainbow and Children's, Ohio State University, Nationwide Children's Hospital, Cincinnati Children's, and the University of Cincinnati. And by working together across these 8 institutions, not only are we going to drive research forward in terms of rare diseases as well as common diseases in the community, but in fact we're going to be able to actually serve as a new way of working together to be able to find answers that are important for the people of Ohio. And what you've also heard today, of course, is the ATRN, the Appalachian Translational Research Network, where we've started out with 5 founding members to begin to work together to think of ways to actually improve the health of the people of Appalachia. And this is one of the first efforts here in Central Ohio to actually bring that forward. We drive science and drive innovation through research funding, and we do that through our pilot research program. Over the first 5 years of the CCTS funding, we've given more than $3.5 million worth of pilot funding to investigators at Ohio State, and actually in collaborative pilots across multiple other institutions, including those involved in the ATRN. And you can see that, in fact, that there's been more than 80 different research disciplines represented by our project teams, and they've been highly successful at actually leveraging this not only to new information, but in fact to grants to be able to look at this much more in depth. In the next 5 years, I think we decided to really focus our efforts on several major areas that have great interest across all of the colleges. And it's really focused on the areas of translational therapeutics, translational precision medicine, and health equities and engagement, with a greater focus on the Appalachian region, with developing programs in comparative effectiveness, and really how do we leverage informatics for a learning healthcare system to actually improve the way that we deliver care. We're beginning to think not only in longitudinal ways of doing things in this more linear structure, but in more collaborative, different ways, such as in the area of drug discovery, where we brought together a tremendous number of resources, and we can begin to actually see the integration of these clusters to think of new ways of how we might more efficiently develop drugs that are going to deal with some of those most pressing problems that we see about. When we begin to look at leveraging our clinical research resources together, we begin to think about actually how do we operationalize personalized medicine? How do we get the right treatment to the right person at the right time? And we do that by actually deep phenotyping and defining the individuals so that we can begin to understand that better. And a whole set of new resources have really been moved in that area to allow us to move forward. As I said, we want to be able to take this information and actually change lives. And the way that we do this is to partner together with our communities. And the Appalachian Translational Research Network is one of these opportunities that allow us to work together to actually impact this wide swath of the Middle Eastern part of the United States, which certainly has had great challenges for chronic disease management due to its health inequities. And then we utilize the robust training programs across the Ohio State University to really bridge that translational divide so that we bring basic scientists, clinician scientists, community-based practitioners, and public health officials, and bring all of them together to work in an educational perspective. So in fact that we don't have linear structures, but in fact we actually have matrix organizations and new generations of scientists who actually know how to work in these unique teams. We develop new programs that actually increase the career development for all members of the research team. So in addition to the principal investigator, which we're used to thinking about this, the research nurses and coordinators, the investigational pharmacists, the biostatisticians, the research managers, and the community network physicians all have a place to go to get additional resources and educational materials to really continue to move their field forward and to actually be actively engaged in the team. And then we've worked together with the Fisher College of Business to really move forward this concept, as I said, of innovation, working together with the colleges of arts and science to increase the entrepreneurial activities of women. And as a result of that, there's been a significant increase in the amount of invention disclosures and startups that have resulted. So over the next 5 years, what I hope you will see from the CCTS is not only a focus on these 3 areas, as well as an embracement of the entire area of translational science, but in fact, providing a foundation that really moves for greater integration and innovation, going from foundational programs to actually clusters where you see that integration, from rather than agnostic resources to think about platform development moving forward, clinical research, drug development, community engagement, and other areas, all the way through the new ways of adult learners and ways to disseminate that information back out to the communities. And I hope that over the next 5 years that you'll continue to join in with us, because in fact, by working together, we can do something great.